Well, hey everybody, welcome to I don't even know what number this is. I should go back and try to count them and figure out what number of in the sequence it is. Anyway, the November 2023 Global User Group meeting. Today, for your wonderment and enjoyment, we've got all kinds of things going on. But first, because I do not see our guest speaker yet, I believe, Tony, you had a couple of updates and some just community things to do.
Yeah. So we're still expanding what we're doing on the community site. So we recently introduced the knowledge bases that have different articles. Chris has actually written most of them. Let me share the screen real quick.
Well, to be fair, Jess wrote them. I just posted them, but you can give me. Sure, I did
But
them.
they're still there.
Yes.
I put them up.
So if you go into knowledge base now, you can see we have the articles, but something that has been asked, and a lot of people, we talked about it at CribbleCon, was the tip sheets here. So like the Cribble search tip sheet, this is one that I was actually, I stole or was using earlier today. I've been playing with search a lot, so it gives you all the basic concepts, a nice PDF that you can download and print, and gives you, even your performance tips, not just the basics, but how to actually structure things to get the best results out of using search.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we have, the sources and destinations, edge, stream. So these are the four that we have currently. We're working on some other ones. A lot of great stuff coming out with that. Really excited. Here's the articles that we were talking about right now. A couple best practices, the reducing missed events. So we're going to continuously add this to be a little more technical than the blogs. As you can see here, when we're talking, we're getting down to some of the really detailed information here with screenshots and how to actually do stuff instead of just nice quick overviews. We're actually going into, you see, there's 8 steps here to get you going, wrap up. And from here, if you still have questions, you can take this from the knowledge base and then go in and ask your questions with the discussions here. Speaking of discussions, we added a new category, job board. Currently it's blank, but if you have a opening at your company that you want to help get the word out, you can actually do a new post here, new discussion, and here in the job board you can post information about the job. It'll go to one of us admins to verify that it's not just spam and it's an actual posting, and that way you get the word out to your job, help the search engines find it with being more links. But we want to make sure that, our community can help each other by seeing job postings. If you have one for your company, you post it, someone else sees it, they have a friend they can send it to, and that way everybody is able to get better within the community and be able to share what's going on within their company. Again, for the all job descriptions here, or all the categories, we have different the different categories. We have our monthly leaderboard. Ronnie is currently winning this month with 23 points. We just did the double points week at the beginning, end of October, beginning of November. And JP actually moved himself into the level 2, so he was able to get some limited edition swag, which a nice t-shirt. You're going to get a little more color than your traditional black t-shirt. I have enough of the black t-shirts. I've now added a little teal into the color of my shirts, but this one's a little bit different. Not something you're going to find traditional IT. So definitely a nice little win there for everybody. Does anybody have any questions about the community site or what's going on with the community right now? Has anybody actually started playing with search yet? What's your thoughts?
I like it. I've we done a a proof of concept on it to query some data in S3, and it worked exactly like described.
That's actually the source I'm using right now. Also, every time that you do stuff in the community site, it is logged and dumped into S3. So maybe I'll actually go through and see, what are our top pages, what are the questions and keywords that are people searching. So yeah, it's been phenomenal to be able to switch completely off of some other technologies and onto just straight search, so I can keep everything going. So Jason's doing his first certificate, getting his Cribl CCOE user. That's awesome. That takes usually about 6 to 8 hours, Chris. I think that's what about it took me. I think I was right in about the 6-hour mark.
I'm going to jump in there. So as a person in the midst of the CCOE, for those of us that are a little less familiar, it's going to take a little longer, and that's okay. It just, you do it when you can do it. And what's really nice is broken up into nice chunks so that you can do it into pieces. So I really love the CCOE program. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. I was going to say, to be fair, Tony and I were, starting jobs here. So it was kind of easy to say, I'm going to take some time and go do that thing. So.
Completely focused time, right?
Yeah.
I don't have that right now.
Exactly.
And it helps when your boss says, go get your certification.
Yes.
Exactly.
I would also say, though, the sandboxes are fantastic as well. Done the one, done several of them and really enjoyed them because it's a little more hands-on. So it's at the beginning, CCOE is more information, and then it's labs where the sandboxes are almost immediately hands-on. So that's really fun.
Well, even with myself, just playing, there'll be times I'll be trying to get something done and I'm like, oh wait, there's a sandbox. I can go and break it there and not mess up my instance, and then actually do it correctly. So
Gotta love that.
Yep.
All
Awesome.
right.
Speaking of
And
sandboxes.
Yeah, speaking of
sandboxes. Apologies for the tardiness. I had another meeting that ran over. So I am super excited to talk about all things Cribl and Kubernetes and Helm Charts and where the heck do you get started with some of this stuff. So let's do this. I'm going to share my screen for folks to be able to see resources that we have. So what the heck is a Helm chart? What is Kubernetes? Is all this magical stuff I've never heard of, or I don't fully understand. So with that, so Kubernetes is basically a way of running infrastructure. I think it took the best of both worlds of Docker and virtual machines and mashed it all up, and now you have a way to orchestrate and deploy large-scale applications very quickly, just about on any infrastructure, any cloud service provider, or on-prem. No matter the flavor of Kubernetes that you're running, we have customers that are doing deployments on just about any platform that you can think of. So with Kubernetes, there was another project called Helm, and you can kind of see these nautical references sneak in here. So for those that don't know, Kubernetes is actually derived from an ancient Greek word. I won't even try to pronounce it, but it talks about like the helmsman of a ship and being able to steer the ship. So here we are with Helm. And basically Helm is a way of packaging up applications. You can think of this as like a RPM or a tarball of contents here. So Cribl publishes Helm charts for all of the components of a typical deployment that you would have. So you can see the leader here. Yes, we still refer to this as log stream in here. It's been one of those things where we've just been meaning to get rid of it. But, unfortunately, if I get rid of this, I break everybody's deployment. So we got to think about when that actually happens. So we've got the leader chart here, the worker group chart. We've also got an edge chart. We'll talk about that in a second here. And then a chart for app scope for those of you that might be interested in playing with that. So the leader and the worker groups, pretty straightforward in terms of installation. You can walk through the documentation in terms of configuring all of the different settings that's provided here. So the way that a Helm chart works is we provide a default values file. You can find this at values.yaml for each of the chart. And the values here are essentially things that you can replace inside the chart. So the charts operate based on templates. These templates are based on the, I believe, Go template syntax. And so if we were to look in any of these files here, for instance, on the leader, you can see there's a lot of things that reference these double curly braces, which either is referring to some type of function in the Helm templating language or referencing something like a value itself. So you can see here, replicas is defined by values.replica count. If we were to go back to the values file, we can see here's a replica count. And so this is a super easy way of being able to make changes to your deployment without having to go change all of the backend templating itself. So once you provide your values, we've got the default here. You can either provide them via a set command, or you can provide them via a separate values.yaml file. Basically, you can kind of stack these. Those of you that are familiar with kind of the local and default config settings in Cribl and Splunk, for instance, it's kind of the same exact way. It has an order of precedence that's applied based on how that's input here. So this allows you to basically get all of this set up, make any changes that you need. You notice there's a lot of references to things like annotations in the chart here. Annotations are kind of the lifeblood of how things are deployed on Kubernetes. So if I need to make changes to, for instance, the ingress annotations, if I'm on GKE or EKS or AKS, I can change the annotations based on this. I don't actually have to change the ingress configs. All I need to do is change the values that are provided here. So again, very extensible way of deploying Cribl and the software components very rapidly on the different cloud providers here. And then updates is simple as just saying Helm upgrade, and then you provide the original values file that you used, and boom, you now have the latest and greatest Helm chart. Or let's say you like the Helm chart, you can always change the tag that's used. This is referenced, for instance, in the deployments. So let's say you wanted to use a separate version of Cribl container image somewhere, you could change that. Again, it's meant to be very configurable and usable for all of your use cases. So just looking here. Cool. Yep. So a leader, getting started there, you can deploy a number of worker groups in order to actually process your data. And coming to my favorite here, Cribl Edge. So we recognize that Kubernetes is kind of the future of where at least I'll say microservice-oriented computing is going. And so Edge really allows you to take the power of the Cribl Edge agent and roll this out on Kubernetes, again, very quickly, and be able to operationalize it in such a way where you just go very quickly. So Cribl Edge on Kubernetes, so if you're familiar with this on Windows and Linux, file system metrics, those type of things, when deployed on Kubernetes, you get some extra goodies. That includes a Kubernetes log, event, and metric source, in addition to be able to use what's called the Prometheus scraper. So instead of maintaining a separate Prometheus scraper stack and a cube state metric stack and a Grafana agent stack, I can now collapse all of this down into the Cribl Edge agent and actually leverage the quick connect capabilities to forward all of the data that's relevant, get only the right stuff to the destinations, and you've got that choice and control over what you're doing. And interestingly, we bring up the sandbox. So if you haven't been out here lately, I would encourage you to do so, because we've added a few extra things. And unfortunately for me, this is a fun course, got kind of buried at the bottom. So Kubernetes observability with Cribl Edge. This will actually set up a virtual Kubernetes cluster inside our Kubernetes environment here that runs the sandbox, and will let you play around with deploying Cribl Edge and taking a look at basically all of the things that you would do, from setting up the sources and destinations, and then being able to visualize that data in Grafana. So, I mean, being able to have the terminal here. Let's get this going. So, like, okay, get pods. Like here, this is an environment that you can play around with. Hey, I want to add the Helm repo. Again, getting started with this is extremely easy. We publish our charts. You can find this here or on our documentation or on the GitHub site. So, we've got that all set up. Just kind of running through this here. Create a namespace for deploying this. Here we go. Let's set up Cribl Edge. We've got this rolled out now. Unfortunately, you've got to make one change here. Change this. So those of you that use Kubernetes, make sure you change this to quad 0. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad day because the health checks will fail. So yes, I don't like to put commit messages in. So here we go. We've got an edgy connected here, and I mean, now we can just start building out all of the fun stuff. Again, being able to have Kubernetes events, logs, metrics, all the good stuff here. And I love being able to come in and say, hey, these are the only things that I want to actually collect logs from, making it just stupid easy to get the data. So let's go ahead and deploy that out, give it a second to cook, and then we should be able to see some of these messages coming across the wire here. So Kubernetes events, for instance, this is what's happening inside your cluster. For instance, new pod, new node, ingress created, service deleted, whatever that is, it's going to create basically a JSON output of those events themselves, and you would be able to say, see kind of the same thing. Basically like this, kube control events. This would be the exact same data that is emitted by the event source. We don't have anything right now. Metrics is kube state metrics equivalent. Let's see if it is running. Yeah, so every 15 seconds so far, this will generate lovely metrics about what's happening inside the environment here. So here we go. We've got all of that. And then the Kubernetes logs, we don't really have anything running right now. So let's do this. We will get something going. Yeah, here we go. Let's do this. Paste this in. Go. Now we have a noise pod. It's going to make some noise in the environment. And if we refresh either of these, maybe we'll see it. Whatever. Once that gets all spun up, we can see. So here's all the Cribl logs themselves. But again, being able to see that, and then also make intelligent decisions based on drilling down into the metadata itself about like the kube pod. I can see the full specification about the setup here in the environment. So really being able to make routing and filtering decisions based on this, super easy. And then also leveraging the power of the Cribl to Cribl connection here via HTTP or TCP to pass that data right from edge to your stream workers without having to set too much up. So it's kind of the Kubernetes edge setup in a nutshell here with the Helm charts. I definitely encourage you to go out to the sandbox if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the Kubernetes and how to deploy the Helm charts, things like that. This is a great place to, as mentioned earlier, mess around and break stuff without really breaking anything. You break it and just shut it down and restart it. All good. So yeah, definitely an exciting course here. For those of you that kind of want to play with Edge, I've got a what we used at our sales kickoff this past year. I've made this public here out on my GitHub. I'll put this in the link for the Zoom chat for those that are interested. But this is basically a Docker setup of all of the things that you would do in this sandbox. Is actually derived from this lab here. But it will go through setting everything up for you from a local kind cluster, deploying all the different Helm charts. So you can kind of see here's what a sample values file would look like for a leader, a worker group, an edge deployment. And then we've got that, noise pod here. So fun stuff to be able to do this. If you're interested, hit me up on the community Slack, and I'm more than happy to give you the documentation for running through this lab here if you're interested in doing this locally on your machine. But a lot of this is actually in the sandbox course itself. So for those of you that don't want to put all the bits on your machine, feel free to go out here and do that. Do we actually get this running? Yeah, here's our noise pod. So if I click on this, yeah, so we're now getting those events from the pod itself. So pretty fun. And this would be the same exact thing. You go over here. Oops. So this is the logs from the pod. We're getting all that data. We're gathering it through Cribl, adding all of the extra goodies to it. And yeah, feel free to do whatever you want with that data. I'll pause there. I kind of rambled a lot about all of the stuff, and love anybody have questions or thoughts, or how do we make this better? Do you guys want to use Kubernetes in your environment? Is Kubernetes a 4-letter word for you, or or what?
I like the I'll put the sandbox out there. I think I literally just got off a call with a client, and we're working with Kubernetes, and I'm, painfully lacking in experience with that. So I'm going to take you up on this one.
Mika has a question. Is
Yeah.
supported too?
Yeah, so OpenShift's been a little bit of a pain because they have their own flavor of how things are done and some security settings in that. I don't have it documented today on the exact things that are required for OpenShift, but yes, the charts will work if you want to deploy them on OpenShift. So being that this is kind of a community-driven effort here out on the Helm Charts repo, I love feedback. Please tell us documentation that's missing, things that we need to add. If you submit a pull request, I will review it. I love pull requests. If you have something that you want to change, make this better, please, please, please do that. Or, just file an issue, say, hey, I want these things done. Happy to collaborate on what needs to be added. But I don't have a personal OpenShift cluster, so I haven't been able to test some of those settings. We just have what we've done in corporate environments for OpenShift. So Mika, if you know anything, the secret sauce that we need to add here, please let us know. Or really anybody.
Great. It's all about participation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All
So,
right.
Are there any other questions, comments, other default commit messages? That seemed to be a popular topic for a moment. Besides blanks. I always try to make mine, by the way, like be descriptive of what it is, but that comes from, only doing a few a week, basically. I know as I do more and more, they tend to reduce in volume and quality until perhaps the ASDF is about where we end up.
Yeah.
For me, it depends on who has to read it downstream.
Yeah.
That'd be true.
if I'm demoing, I'm not going to even try to type because I know I'm going to type it wrong. So that's where ASDF comes from. There's just something about, demoing to a live audience where you're not going to type it right. So yeah, it's just comes out as gibberish.
Right. Something on your clipboard like, this is just a demo. Paste. Paste.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, but whenever I do a commit and deploy to a worker group, I'll put whatever was changed in there, but it also triggers a commit and deploy or commit rather to main, which often just has a version increment. Those are the ones I just put random crap in.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a good call out. Because you're working with two different contexts here. You have the worker group or the fleet itself, which is controlled through the commit and deploy buttons. This magic version control up here, this is the leader context itself. So not necessarily the config versions for individual worker groups or fleets, but yes, like you said, if you make a change to that, you can see I enable this here. You're going to see it at the global context. I can say, hey, yeah, cool, I'll commit and deploy. But yes, absolutely, you're going to have like a version change show up there. If let's say, I'm just going to do something silly here. Bump, save. So yeah, commit and deploy. You noticed how the commit button lit up, but also the version control for the leader lit up there. So we'll deploy this pipeline out, and then you can see here that the diff, we've got this pipeline, and then if we commit it, it's just the config version. So this is the leader just tracking where in the Git repo history it should be deploying the config from. So yep, absolutely. We want to make sure that this gets committed. Otherwise, the leader's not going to know. Let's say you have to restore from a Git repo. It's not ideal if you don't know where your last checkpoint is. And I highly encourage you, if you're running on-prem and you have an enterprise license, set up a Git remote and set up your scheduled actions to at least push your repo to a remote Git repo. That way, let's call it a doomsday vault. If your leader decides it's just going to have a bad day, you can always go back. And if you go out to the Cribl docs, and restore from Git. Restoring leader from a remote repo. You can walk through this this document here about how to restore all of those configs. So always recommend at least 2 copies of a backup. And in this case here, for instance, you can use, if you're not familiar with this, I have a YouTube video out there talking about, I think it's like disposable environments or something like that, where we talk about the Cribl volume dir environment variable. This is actually really cool because, for instance, let's say you are running on OpenShift, which does require you to run as a non-root user. You cannot write into the Cribl container because all the files are owned by root. So how do you make that work? Well, you use Cribl volume dir, which you can then mount a separate volume. This environment variable defines where that mount point is and writes all of your configuration, any non-default changes into this folder. So basically the 2 backup strategy here is take a copy of that volume that you've defined for Cribl volume dir, and you've got your Git repo. So now you have 2 backups of your configs. You're good. There you go.
There was a question that came in. I noticed
Still
update the Edge global setting to 0000 from 127.0.0.1. Can that be fixed with a config map?
I wish. I wish. Unfortunately, this is one of those, we have erred on the side of caution. For those that are using Edge, and you may have noticed it when I went in here really quickly, the API server host settings, this is set to 127.0.0.1 by default, the loopback interface. So you must be on the local machine in order to access the Cribl Edge port 9420. Now, if I change this to quad 0, I can be anywhere. And if that port is exposed and your firewall is down, anybody can log in. So ideally, what you would want to do is not change this except for your Kubernetes fleets. Now, why did I change this? The rationale for changing this is in the edge chart, there is a definition for what are called readiness and liveness probes. So Kubernetes is two things when it spins up pods. It first checks to see, are you ready? Are you, can you receive data? Can you process data? Basically, are you in a running state? There's multiple ways to do probes. One of those ways is through HTTP. There's other things like command, you can exec, you can just do like a TCP kind of raw socket. In this case here, we have a handy dandy API v1 health endpoint, which returns a status code of 200 when the Cribl process is running. So readiness probe checks, are you ready to run? Liveness probe checks the health. So once the readiness probe returns, it switches to then checking the liveness probe. Now, this is exactly the same for our software, but in certain circumstances, this could be different configurations. You can change these if you want. Now, from a Kubernetes perspective, you have to listen on a non-loopback IP in order to receive health checks. These come from the actual Kubernetes control plane itself. And so by changing the fleet host settings to quad 0, we enable Kubernetes to actually make and complete health checks. If it's set to loopback, unfortunately, it just goes, timeout, and you'll see your pods recycle over and over and over because it will trigger the liveness probe failure. And so basically Kubernetes says this pod is unhealthy, I will recreate it. So that's a long-winded explanation for why this needs to be done. Unfortunately, you can't change it in the config map itself. You have to change it in here because it's going to get downloaded as part of that fleet configuration bundle. Now, if you wanted to and you said, I don't like health checks, you can just delete this. It's fine. These don't need to exist in here if that's how you want to roll. But otherwise, yeah, I'd recommend leaving this in case that pod, the Cribl software, becomes unhealthy. So can they be configured over TLS? I believe the answer to that is yes. And if you notice the scheme definition here, you should be able to change this in order to be able to make those over TLS or HTTPS.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Well, that was helpful. Are there any other questions or anything? Looks like we may have hit all the ones we already know about.
Any plans to support any additional orchestrated deployment methods, AWS ECS or Terraform?
Yeah, we have an internal thread kind of running like what's next. There's kind of like hodgepodge things that are out there. For instance, like I have my own Cribl Terraform where I put stuff on, like Fargate, for instance. It's kind of a, for lack of a better term, half-ass implementation. It was like, let's get started with this. Does it work? Yes. Is it maintained right now? No. This is from 2 years ago. And yes, also referencing Logstream. So I haven't updated this. Are we talking about, can we potentially build some modules for deploying and managing Cribl infrastructure and configs? Yes. I just think we haven't figured out who's going to own it internally and maintain that. These have typically, just for everybody's understanding here, the Helm Charts have been a community-driven effort. Sure, you can call up support, but more than likely it's going to come over here and they're going to ask you to file an issue on the project. So yes, again, the Terraform modules and stuff would probably be the same exact deployment methodology where it's kind of maintained by the community. So can we get everybody together if you've got kind of that Terraform background and want to help us build stuff? Absolutely. Happy to kind of wrangle the goat herd here and get some stuff prioritized if that makes sense. But do we have any concrete plans today to do stuff? The answer is unfortunately no. Stop sharing. All right.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that. That was great. I guess this brings us all the way full circle if there's no additional questions or anything. And of course, I can always ping you on the community Slack, right?
Absolutely, yes. I am Brendan at Cribl.io. You'll probably see me, though I've been kind of quiet lately. If you post in the containers channel, I'll definitely see it, or the sandbox channel. Those are two places I frequent when I'm on the community Slack. So yeah, just at me. You'll get my attention.
There was one last question came in. If you want to grab that real quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So from Jacob here, if I can manage to build my environment via Terraform and Helm, I'll see what I can do to contribute back. Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. And Paul has shared another repo. One of our other SEs, Ryan Hennessy, has also created some Terraform code for those that are interested. So again, just kind of pockets of stuff in places. There's no real coordinated effort, but I think this, at least from my perspective, this upcoming year, focusing on how do we make this easy to get rolled out and maintained from a customer level. We're the experts on the software. How do we make it easy to get in your hands, use it, upgrade it, maintain it, etc. So again, happy to help or share other thoughts on that offline.
All right. Well, I think then if there's nothing further to do, Tony, is there any other new news or anything? Nothing has come up in the last hour?
Nope. Go join the community, community.cribl.io.
Yep.
Help answer questions, ask questions, find the cheat sheets, and post on the job board.
Perfect. So it's time for the swag rolls. Yay! Cool. I guess that ends our thing today. We are looking for somebody who would like to present on the December meeting. It'll be the second Tuesday. Again, it doesn't have to be anything super amazing. We like demos. We like you clicking things and breaking them. It's all fine. It can be relatively simple, relatively complex. You can have lots of PDFs, although we really just like live demos more than anything. A slide or two to say, hi, here's who I am, and then jump right into it. In any case, so if you have any thoughts, hit us up in either Tony or me directly, or in the community channel, whichever one that is.
And I would also say you're looking for ideas too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't necessarily have to present yourself,
right?
But maybe you have an idea for a presentation that Tony can go, track someone down,
right?
Or that kind of thing. Just more information.
I mean, that's how we got Brandon today. Was somebody said, "I'd love to hear more about Helm Charts," and I went, "Hey, I know a guy." So
perfect. And so anyway, I'll bid you all adieu, and to the folks who are on the other side of the world, a good evening.
Yeah.
So
Bye, team.
Good evening, London.
All right, sure thing. See you all next four Tuesdays from now, whenever it is.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks.
Hey, Ellie.
Thank you.